our very own Kimberly Martin. Kimberly, what do you have for us?
Well, Stephen, I can tell you the interim head coach, Jeff Ulbrich, just announced that Nathaniel Hackett will no longer be calling plays for the Jets. Instead, it'll be passing game coordinator Todd Downing, who will now call plays on offense. Todd Downing had this position in Oakland and in Tennessee. I asked Ulbrich myself, you said you were going to consult with Aaron Rodgers about the decision. How did Aaron take it? What did he say to you? And he said Aaron understood and supported the decision. Obviously, Ulbrich knows how hard it is given their relationship, but he felt like this was the right move. He also said Hackett said, listen, I support you. I got your back, Todd's back, and this team's back. So as of right now, that is the major news. No title change, but Todd Downing will be the play caller.
Kimberly Martin, thank you so much for that information. Really, really appreciate it. Take care. You know, I guess they're going to sing Kumbaya. We got the one and only Mina sitting right next to me here in our LA studios. Thank you for being here. I guess we could say that's how I'm labeling it, Kimberly. Mina. You're still the offensive coordinator, but you ain't calling plays.
Yeah.
That's somebody else. So I don't understand it. I mean, to me, it's like, this is a joke. Why didn't you just get rid of you? You want to keep Nathaniel Hackett employed? Is that what it is? Let's not take a paycheck from it? Is that what this is about? I don't understand it.
Yeah, the title change revelation at the end, or the lack of title change,
Yes.
It only reinforces what we already know, which is this is Aaron Rodgers' team. Yeah. He is, regardless of what he says, very much in control of everything that happens. And that's why I'm sort of skeptical that this play calling change is going to solve things for the Jets. I mean, Todd Downing has, as Kimberly alluded to, called plays in the NFL before. Don't think it was okay in Tennessee until it wasn't. At the end, that offense was not very efficient. It's entirely possible that he improves upon Nathaniel Hackett in terms of sequencing, maybe some of the game day execution stuff, game planning for opponents, sure. But Dan, you know this, the offense is going to be the same. The overall structure of the offense is not going to change with a new play caller. I mean,
but then why make the change? Why make the change, D-Lo? If it's going to be the same, if we're not going to see much different other than the person calling the plays, why tell us that, you know what, he's not going to be calling the plays anymore? It's going to be somebody else. Doesn't that breed a change in expectations to some degree?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. You keep calling me D-Lo, and I'm interested in why, because you've never done that, Stephen A. So
Yeah,
I do like it.
I like it.
Because you get low, I guess.
Dan Orlovsky, so D-Lo, I like that. No, listen, there's got to be some change. There has to be in this offense. I have been adamant about that for a while now. I do want to see more motion, Stephen A. I do want to see more play action. I don't think it's going to change a ton because Aaron doesn't want a ton of motion, but there has to be a little bit more. Mina brings up the point of like sequencing. So J-Mac and I yesterday did a long breakdown on like what's really at the root of the issues with their offense. Stephen A, I would phrase it as this. It's the least detailed offense in the NFL right now when it comes to guys doing what they're supposed to do. And on every play, someone takes their turn not doing that. One play, it's the offensive line. The next play, it's the tight ends. The next play, it's the quarterback. The next play, it's a drop by a wide receiver. The next play, it's Garrett not being where he's supposed to be there. So why the change? Maybe there is Todd Downing stepping in and demanding more details out of this. Demanding more focus on it. Maybe that, again, I don't expect there to be this massive scheme change, but if there's a 10% increase in stuff, that'll have an impact.
I'm interrupting you for two reasons. Number one, I call you D-Lo because it sounds a hell of a lot better than Orlovsky.
I agree.
Number one.
I agree.
And number two, Mina is clamoring to chime in here. I'll get to you, J-Mac, in a second. Mina, I know you want to respond to something Dan said. What is it?
It's just the way, Dan, you're talking about this offense, the lack of attention to detail, the lack of play action and motion. It just reminds me so much of how the Green Bay offense was discussed at the end of Rodgers' career. And the reason I bring that up is when you talk about those things, so many of them are fundamental to the quarterback because this is the type of offense that the quarterback wants. And that type of offense is one where attention to detail matters so much because the margins for error are so slim. He doesn't have the easy buttons we see in modern offenses in terms of play action and motion. And frankly, he's not really throwing that much over the middle of the field, much as he did near the end of his time in Green Bay. And my feeling is that's not going to change because the quarterback doesn't want it to change. I think that's what's been, you know, I've watched you guys talk about this offense over the last few days. Dan, I've watched you explain how problematic it is, but I don't really see a world in which these changes happen because of the quarterback.
I'm going to interrupt you because I want to get to J-Mac, but most importantly, you were succinct and very clear, and I appreciate that, but it still doesn't mean I'm devoid of the obligation to remind you of the rules and the regulations, okay? We speak when I say we speak. I just want to tell you that.
Got
But
you.
for you, I will make the exception.
I
Mina.
appreciate you letting me
J-Mac,
cut in.
you go ahead.
We don't
go
get
ahead.
the exception. Dan, I miss Molly.
You don't.
I look at this offense and just how funny things happen. So you look at this now, Todd Downing's taken over. Before Todd Downing was with the New York Jets, he was a part of the Tennessee Titans. Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator when he was there. Arthur Smith was on the coaching staff with LaFleur before LaFleur went to Green Bay. I look at, and you guys are right, how much can the scheme change? You can't put in a whole bunch of new plays. But what I look at from a defensive standpoint, if I'm preparing for the New York Jets, you start to look at the numbers. You're like, all right, Rodgers threw 54 passes, 42 passes, and then a new play caller comes in. And how much does he now focus on running the football? When Todd Downing was the offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans, he had Derrick Henry in the backfield. They were first in the NFL in rushing attempts. He decided to hand the ball off to the best player on his football team. Well, now he takes over an offense that features Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Hand the football off to those guys in the backfield.
They better block
And let's
better.
see- Yes, no question. They have to block better. But for that same reason, you want to throw the ball better? Guys aren't open either. They're not catching the ball. Lazard's dropping the ball. So the things that you guys are saying, yes, that's not working, but you have to be able to do something different. He can't just take over and call all the same plays. He is going to change something. Dano, put your daggone hand down.
I was going to move on, but he did raise his hand. He was respectful. He asked permission, so I will let him chime in. Just make it quick.
I do think that this offense will change, though. I think that's one of the reasons why, or the main reason why, you move on from Hackett to Todd Downing. If you weren't going to change the offense, and Mina, I understand like the theory that Rodgers doesn't want it, but if you weren't going to change it,
He said as much.
okay, all right. But here's my point: if you weren't even interested in changing it, then you wouldn't change the play caller. But maybe now it's like, hey, we're going to do what's best for the offense and not just Aaron. And this is part of that.
Hold on, Mina. Maybe the organization has grown some guts. And they've said, Joe Douglas, along with Downing, along with Woody Johnson, this is what we need to do. We tried it your way. Now, Aaron Rodgers, you need to try it ours.
If the organization had guts, they would have made this change before the season. They knew who Nathaniel Hackett was as the play caller. We saw him last year. You've seen him, frankly, over the course of his career, and they went into this season with Hackett. To me, this is an organization that is just reactive right now.
I'll stay with you on this question, Mina. How do you feel this is going to affect, all of this is going to affect Aaron Rodgers' legacy? If they win, obviously in a positive way, but if they lose?
Yeah, here's where I'll defend Rodgers, because I think in 10 years, and when we talk about legacy, you have to take a longer timeline. Nobody's going to remember that Robert Saleh was fired in week 5 instead of week 7 or whatever. They're going to look at him as a quarterback who's a 4-time MVP, who at his peak is one of the most talented football players I've ever seen in my lifetime, who had multiple appearances in NFC championships and won one Super Bowl. And that's how he'll be regarded, right, as one of the greatest to ever do it, but someone who's not as accomplished as the likes of obviously Tom Brady, Montana, et cetera. The only way you'd see this impacting his legacy is if you truly believed this was a Super Bowl team. I never felt that way.
Orlovsky?
Yeah, number one, this team plays for first place on Monday night. And they've got their 2 games after that are the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This could be a very different vantage point in 3 weeks of how we look at Aaron and this situation than it has over the past couple of days. The second part of this, Stephen A., is I do believe, and you were part of Monday with me and Shannon. I love Shannon, got nothing but admiration for him. I do believe that there are players, because of their play, that when we talk about them as players, that play is merited or warranted a way that we speak about them. There are a couple guys that have earned that right just when we're talking about them as players. And I think we've lost track of that a little bit with Aaron Rodgers. He's an all-time great. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's a 4-time MVP. So, yes, when we talk about Aaron as a player, we could be critical and we could be fair and we could tell the truth. But there's also a way that we should be speaking about him, just like we did Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and guys that have earned that right.
I agree.
Okay.
When you speak about these guys, you say all of those things, the 4 times MVP, all-time great, Hall of Fame, and then if his play stinks on the field, you say the play stinks on the field and you show why. You still can say those things to your point, Dan. I look at this from a legacy standpoint. I think the immediate reaction will be, yes, it will taint his legacy. A coach was fired in the middle of the season. He was brought in to resurrect this offense and do so much. But I'm with Mina where over time it changes. You look at Eli Manning, he got benched in a game where Geno Smith inserted in the lineup against the Raiders, and then the coaches got fired. When we start talking about Eli Manning and when he's up for the Hall of Fame, we're not going to focus on those things. So I think immediately, yes, right now we're going to talk about legacy. But down the line, I think you're going to remember all those things that you mentioned that happened in Green Bay.